In this video, we're going to talk about how to create outlines and fill colors with this apple. We're going to create a vector shape with the pen tool. This is the pen tool right here. It looks kind of like a calligraphy pen. And we're going to work with the pen tool to kind of create a shape around this apple. So the first thing we need to do is we need to lock these layers. This is considered a reference photo, and since we're pretty much tracing around this object, we don't want it to move. We don't want to use the selection tool and click on it accidentally and then move the image around, because that would cause some conflict to our image if we were already tracing it. So next to the little eyeball that turns the image off and on, like so, there's a little blank square here on the layers panel, on the layer 1. If you click that, it creates a lock. That lock then will lock, as you can see, the pencil with a circle with a line through it means that you have no actions for this layer. You cannot do anything to it unless you unlock the layer. See? As you can tell, it's back to the selection mode, and then it's locked. So we need to create another layer. So down here, this icon, it looks like a piece of paper with the edge folded. We're going to click that, and it creates a new layer. As you can see, layer 2. Now we need to change the layer's name so that we are a little bit more organized. So I'm going to click on layer 1 first, and I'm going to double click on the actual name of the layer. As you can see, I can rename the layer now, and I'm going to name it just ref for reference. And then I'm going to double click on layer 2, and I'm going to name this outline. Now that we have our 2 different layers, we can work on the outline layer for our actual vector shape, because our reference layer is now locked. So I'm going to grab the pen tool here, and I want to demonstrate just a little bit about the pen tool. The pen tool has a few little things to it. If I click once, you can see this right here, this little square in the middle, is called an anchor point. That anchor point essentially is the beginning point to a path. I'll click again, and I create a path from one anchor point, to another anchor point. So the path always starts from the beginning to the next anchor point, to the next anchor point, to the next anchor point. If I start another one, and I then click and hold the anchor point, I can create handlebars. These handlebars allow you to pull a curve to create a path to create a curve. And if you want to create a curve that matches a specific area, you are going to watch the anchor point, or you're going to watch the path as it starts to kind of lay on top of whatever reference photo that you're using. Now, at times when you create a path that's curved like so, it will show another path for your next attachment for your shape already curving. Sometimes you may not want it to curve, or you may want to start over with a fresh straight line so that you can then curve it a little bit more manually. So how to get rid of this curve that we have here already, we're going to click on the anchor point right here, and it turns off that path there. And as you can see, now we have a straight line that works with our shape. So then I can go back over here and I can curve this the way that I want it. And I can have a nice curve there. And then click on the anchor point, and then I can connect those, and I have a curved area here and a straight line at the bottom. So let me delete these, and we'll go back to the apple. Now we're looking at the apple. We want to create essentially a traced outline around the apple's edge to create a vector shape. This is not a vector shape yet, so we want to create one. So use the pen tool, this one right here, and we're going to click on one of the edges. Okay, as you can see, that little anchor point is now on the edge of this apple. And I'm just going to go down a little bit, maybe about this much. You don't want to start another anchor point in this sort of distance because it's just too small. You can work with bigger areas. The whole point of vectors is to try to get as few anchor points in an image as possible, but still creating the detail of the image. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click and hold and drag, and I'm going to create essentially a curve of the apple. It doesn't have to be extremely perfect, but it has to somewhat look like it's on top of that apple, on top of the edge of whatever you're trying to trace over. So I'm going to click, I'm going to let go, and as you can see, I have a new curve here. Now you can tell right here that at the end of the curve, it kind of goes up into the apple a little bit. So we don't want to actually have that happen. So we're going to click on the anchor point so that we can take away that handle. And now I have a straight line. Now I can be a little bit more successful in creating a curve along that edge. So now it looks like a lot better edge going along that apple. And then I can click on here again. Kind of come down a little bit maybe. Click on it again, maybe here. Kind of bend that in a little bit. Come over here. Bend that. And all I'm doing is I'm taking the edge and I'm just using that as a translation to create a curve around it. Bend here. Bend right here. As you can see, my curve is nice and clean. Bend there. And I can curve this, but look what happens. It's kind of up. It's kind of above the apple. So I got to go back in here, turn off that handle, so I can get a little bit more curvature of what the actual shape is. Then I can go in here, curve it, and then end my shape at the from the last anchor point that I made to the beginning anchor point that I made. Let go, and there it is. My shape of the apple, my entire path. And if I turn on, I click on my strokes and I turn on my stroke, I'm going to double click on the stroke. And I'm just going to add a color in there. Push OK. Turn off my reference. And as you can see, now I have the curvature of my apple. It's not perfect, but it has enough form in there where it looks a little more exact. The next thing I want to do is I want to create another line around the leaf and the stem here. But first I want to create sort of a form line on this apple, so it shows a little bit of form with the apple and a little bit of perspective. Since we're creating more of a 2D apple from this image, we want it to look like it's somewhat relevant in that there's a little hole in the apple as you start to look at it. So I just create kind of like a little edge there. But here's the thing though. As you can see, the little edge that's popping up here, it's not going to create a full shape. So we want to end our stroke along this line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the P key on my keyboard. And when I hit that, it turns off that edge. It is no longer there, and I can actually start another shape if I wanted to. So now I have that there. So I have another little area here where it shows sort of where that apple has a tiny bit of an indentation where the leaf and the stem go. I'm going to zoom in a little bit because I want to get a little bit closer to my stem here because it's a little farther away. It's always good to go in close to the image. We're still working in the outlines, but I'm going to bring down the hierarchy of my outlines. And I'm going to lock these two. Now here's the thing, I'm locking only these layers here. I'm not actually locking the entire layer. Since I'm not locking all of the layers, I'm only locking those two, so I can still work in this outlines layer. So I'm going to start a new path, and I'm going to click right on this little outline here. Okay, it's not as you can tell, it's not affecting the line that I made because it's locked right now. And I'm just going to kind of quickly create a very simple stem that looks somewhat like the image. I'm working a little bit smaller because there's smaller areas. I'm just kind of coming in here and making a very quick stem. And I'm not going to finish this shape. I'm just going to keep it like that. And as you can see with it, I still have a point here and a point here. They are not connected. Because what we're going to do is we're going to work a little bit more manually. As you can see, they're not connected, so we're going to work a little bit more manually. And this allows us to work with our layers when we add color into them. The next one I'm going to do is I'm going to do the leaf. I'm going to start here again, and I'm going to create the beginning of the leaf, and then start to go outwards. Creating a few more areas, and I'm working kind of small here. And really the size of it depends on what you're looking for and what works for you. As you can see, I kind of messed up there. And if I ever mess up, I can always do Control-Z, go back, and then start over again, and then actually sort of bend the edges again so that I can match those particular parts. And then there it is, and I end there, and as you can see, there is my leaf as well. Let me hide the apple so you can see the apple outlines and the apple itself. And as you can see, there's no connection here. That's fine. There's no connection here because I'm working with a different method in adding the color. So I'm going to pop those back up. As you can see, there it is, like so. But we have a problem. We have this line that goes through these lines, and if we add color in the background, all it's going to do is actually show through. We don't want to see these lines, so we need to delete them. But if we delete them, we can't. We'll delete the entire thing. So what we need to do is we need to actually create new anchor points within a selection. So what we're going to do is we're going to select this outline of the apple, and we're going to lock all of those other outlines. This outline here, the leaf outline, this little line right here, we're gonna lock all those. And the only one we have is this apple outline, the outline of the entire apple. We're gonna zoom a little bit, and as you can see, we have a few little anchor points here. Okay, and I'm just gonna grab the pen tool, and if you notice on the pen tool, there's this little star there. Okay, if I move in closer and I go right on top of that path, you can see that it changes to a plus sign. That means you want to add an anchor point. So I'm going to add an anchor point right here where it connects to this, and right here when it connects on this side. And since there's already an anchor point in the middle, I'm going to delete that point. So how I delete that is I'm going to select the direct selection tool, which is actually the white arrow right under your selection tool. This tool actually selects specific anchor points in your entire image. So I can go in here and I can select this anchor point, grab a handlebar if I wanted to, and actually move this handlebar to edit my image. But instead what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on this middle anchor point that's inside and delete it. And I've deleted it. And now it's completely deleted in that specific area, so it doesn't look like it's actually going through the stem. If we click back onto the apple outline, you'll notice that there is no anchor point inside the middle. So what we have to do is we actually have to add an anchor point at the ends, right here, and then we have to add an anchor point in the middle between those two anchor points so that we can delete this specific area. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to grab the anchor point and then hit delete, and now it's gone. You can also, if you wanted to, use the delete anchor point tool here. If you click and hold on the tool, you can see that there's other tools inside this little tool shelf here. And you can tell that by having this little tiny arrow at the bottom right corner of your tool. It will show more tools inside. Now that we have the entire outline, we can zoom out a little bit, and we can see what we have here. Our entire apple with our outlines. Now the next stage that we want to do is we want to actually create color for it. Now most people would probably just grab an outline, create an outline of some sort, and then go to your little fill swatch here, double click on it, and add in a color. That's great, but it doesn't give you a lot of options whenever you have certain things overlapping it. So what I like to do is I like to create outlines first on one specific layer, and then create the colors, the fill inside on a separate layer. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to have both of these layers locked. I'm going to go to my reference photo here, and I'm just going to hit the create layer. So it creates that layer, a new layer in between the reference and the outlines. Now the reason for that is if I have the layer underneath the outlines, you can see that the color actually shows through behind the outline. But if I had the layer above the outline layer, like so, you can see that it covers the outlines. And we don't really want to cover the outlines at this point. So let's bring our layer 3 back down in the middle between our outline layer and our reference layer. Let's call this colors. And you can call it whatever you want, as long as it helps you organize your layers. Now we want to create so we're going to create our layers, fill layers, and we're going to use the pen tool again. And the thing about the fill is that we can go in here and actually just create things based on the layers of where they are. Now remember the sub layers. If you click the little arrow, you can see all the little sub layers inside your layers. So we're going to start on the apple first because it's kind of in the background. And we're just going to stay in between the lines. We're just going to click. As you can see, the green path right here is inside the stroke of the red outline. And I'm just staying inside that outline like so. Because once we start adding the fill, and you can see the fill is already starting to add up, it's creating the color for the object, which makes it work. Now sometimes it's going to look a little wonky, and if you have to do that, just go in here and click on the little anchor point. And remember always to lock your outline layers. If you don't lock them, you could possibly add stuff to the other layers and other outlines that you have already on your document. So be sure to lock your stuff when you're done with, when you're not working on it, so it doesn't get become affected by the work that you start creating. So I'm just going down here, and I work a little bit smaller when it comes to the colors, because all I'm trying to do is stay within the outline of my layer. There's actually another effective way to do this, and I screwed up there. But there's another effective way to do this, and I'm not going to tell you how to do it. But if you can figure it out, that might actually work for you. A lot of it comes down to duplicating, copying, pasting certain areas, and then just changing how they look. But this gives you a little bit more control. It allows you to be more manual with your work, your workflow, and you can then start to add and put in shadows and highlights into your image, and make it a little bit more interesting than just having flat surfaces. So we're almost done. Now, as you can see, we're going in and overlapping over the stem and the leaf, and that's okay because what we're going to do is we're going to create another color that's above the red apple fill that will cover that part. So there's our red apple, and then we're going to add in the color for the stem, which will be more of a brown color. Go in a little bit more and start to add in the brown, and you can probably notice now that the brown is actually going over the red in the image, staying within the range. And you can probably tell here, you can see how it goes over this part. That's okay because what the fill does is it goes from for the first anchor point to the last anchor point. So it's always going to go through a lot of different things. You just got to keep going with your path and just keep creating the color of your fill. And you should then have a full shape there, just like so. And then we'll pick a green color for the leaf. And it's going over because it's just going from the first anchor point to the last. And that's okay, as long as we keep going with our stuff. And as I'm going pretty quickly, so some of my anchor points are outside of my lines, but try to keep them inside the outline of it, because then it will look a lot better, and there'll be a lot better craftsmanship when you start to create it. Sometimes you can use just straight lines to connect these, because you're not going to see the crumminess of your fill, because you're going to have outlines there. Now, if you didn't have outlines for your design, that's when you really want to get your paths to look nice and accurate. I do suggest getting them nice and accurate, even if you can't see them or they're under some type of outline, just because it makes you a better artist and allows you to be better in what you're trying to create. See, it's going through like that. You just keep going through it, and you'll be okay. Come down here to finish it out, and there we go. We got a little apple here, like so. It's pretty cool. And then one final little touch, we're just going to create a little tiny highlight on top of the apple. As you can tell, it's green. It's because I just haven't changed the color yet, and that's okay. I can always go into my fill here and change the green to, say, a lighter red to add kind of a little highlight there, and I just create a little highlight. Now, to add a little bit more effect, we can create the change of an outline too. So I'm gonna actually turn off the color, and I'm gonna lock the color, and I'm gonna unlock the outline. And I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to grab this outline, okay? And you see the stroke? I'm going to change the stroke of the leaf from that red color to, say, a darker green. So it's now a darker green instead. And then I'm going to increase the weight of my stroke to about 2 points. Go to my stem, do the same thing to my stem. Instead, I'm going to have probably maybe a lighter color instead of the darker, because it kind of complements the darker colors there. It's a little more efficient. And then I've already used red for the apple, and that's okay too. But I'm going to increase the weight of the apple just a little bit. I'm going to use 4 points for that. Remember to always grab all areas too, so they all look the same. And then I have this area here, which is actually a few more inches. And I'm going to actually create a profile for that. As you can see, uniform. I'm going to change the uniform to a width profile, so it creates this cool little line and a little more effective there. Now you can probably notice a few things on this. A few things that are a little distorted here. This line width needs to be above these outlines here. So I'm going to go in here, my hierarchy, and I'm just going to grab whichever one it is. And it's this one right here. I'm going to move that all the way to the top. Put that there. I can also grab these points of interest and I can kind of move them around so they fit a little more accurately with our design. If they don't, or they're placed in a certain particular manner, you can always go in here and readjust them so they kind of fit. So there's our apple. It's not the most elegant apple, but it's all vector, and it works fairly well with our design. And there you go.